Illinois faces some big challenges. Today, you're about to hear a truly honest analysis of the problems we face. Equally important, you'll also hear an in-depth discussion of some practical solutions. This is your radio source for stories, the insight, and the answers you won't hear anywhere else, not in the media, and not coming from Springfield. You're listening to Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Opportunity Project. Now, here's your host, AM 560's Dan Proft.
Welcome to another edition of Illinois Rising. Dan Proft, and I'm the co-host of Chicago's Morning Answer, weekdays 5 to 9 a.m. on AM 560. Joining me, Brian Timpone, the principal of content production companies for newspapers and the like. This interesting story in one of the papers that we do together, DuPage Policy Journal, that summarizes Planned Parenthood's participation in state House and state Senate races here in Illinois, really feeling their oats here and targeting a lot of suburban Republicans after they were given a bit of a boost with the signing of HB 40, new abortion clinics opening up in the Chicago region. The second one just opened in Skokie, second one since the signing of HB 40 by Governor Rauner. And Planned Parenthood, is trying to prosecute their advantage against incumbent pro-life suburban Republicans like Peter Breen and Tom Morrison and Mark Batnick and others, spending north of $600,000 on some 24 races, nearly 40% of which has been focused on Breen and Morrison. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Mary Fiorito. She is the Cardinal Francis George Fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center and a board member at Aid for Women, which is a Catholic life-affirming pregnancy center in Chicago. Mary, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So do you think pro-lifers, suburban families understand two things? One is Planned Parenthood's participation in these legislative races, and two is how extreme Planned Parenthood is when it comes to this particular issue.
Well, I certainly think that pro-lifers are aware of that and have been for some time. And, I think for the pro-life community, the never-ending frustration when you're speaking about Planned Parenthood is, their statement that, well, we're a nonprofit. We're not in this for the money. Which couldn't be further from the truth because they are all about the money. And you certainly need to look no further than Cecile Richards' annual salary, which was, upwards of $500,000, and that was without her benefits. This is a for-profit business, and, that came out fairly clearly when Abby Johnson, who ran one of Planned Parenthood's largest clinics in Texas, defected and went to the pro-life movement and wrote quite an interesting book called Unplanned, where she talks about how her regional director, called her in because her abortion numbers were low. And she was told she needed to get the numbers up. And she said, well, what do you mean I need to get my numbers up? And she said, you're not selling your abortions, essentially, as well as you should be. Your abortion numbers are really down. And she said, but I thought we were a nonprofit. And her regional director laughed and said, Abby, that's a tax status. That's not a business model. And so she actually got reprimanded for letting her number of abortions slip. Now, here in Illinois, now essentially what the state legislature has done, as you well know, Dan, has just simply to hand Planned Parenthood a blank check. And they're opening not just one new clinic. Of course, we've just seen a new one open in Flossmoor, but they have plans for 4 additional clinics in the state of Illinois, plus the other clinic that you mentioned in Skokie, which is kind of like a spa clinic. They're billing themselves as a, place where women can come to relax while they're having their abortions. So I think we're going to see an incredible increase in the number of abortions we have here because, as you know, it's not only free for the vast majority of our residents, but also there's no limit on it. And that always kind of surprises me when I go out to debate the abortion issue, that many people think there's some kind of legal limit on the number of abortions a woman can have, which simply isn't true. You can have as many as you'd like, and now the state's going to pay for them. But also out-of-state residents are, as long as they're on Medicaid, are able to come here and get their abortions for free. So I think we're going to be seeing even greater numbers of people coming from Wisconsin and Iowa and Indiana. We're already seeing that because of the parental notification laws, but I think now it's free.
So 600 grand so far from Planned Parenthood on these legislative races, and of course pro-life organizations, an infinitesimal fraction of that in terms of their ability to support pro-life candidates, including these pro-life candidates that are being targeted for defeat by Planned Parenthood. Why the disparity, and how can the pro-life movement reduce that disparity?
Well, the disparity is because they are selling a product, and we're really not selling a product, right? So abortion is big business. I mean, we talk about big tobacco, right? That was kind of a big phrase back in the day, when the government was targeting tobacco industry. But you really need to think of it in terms of big abortion. Abortion is big money. And because they have big money, they are able to influence media and culture. We can, just simply see, again, their salaries, which would dwarf the salary of any pregnancy resource center director I would know if that person even takes a salary. So, it's always been sort of a David and Goliath battle in terms of money numbers, because we're not taking money from people, right? At any of the pregnancy centers, including Aid for Women, which you so kindly mentioned, women can live with us in one of our maternity homes, for up to 3 years after their child is born, and we never charge her a penny. So we don't charge for any of our services because, we are motivated by gospel values, and we're motivated by the dignity of every human person. So, it's simply a fact that they have resources we don't have, but their ability to buy politicians, and that's precisely what they're doing. It's rather frightening in some respects, because the issue's never really fairly considered, because they have so much money with which to purchase votes.
Hi, Mary. It's Brian Timponi. Can you talk a little about the evolution of this issue here in Illinois? Obviously, the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, we've been debating abortion. The Republican Party was the pro-abortion party before, and the Democrats were kind of split, and maybe were even more pro-life. Now it's changed over. How different is it today than it was, maybe 20 years ago? Can you put that in some perspective?
I can give you just from a kind of family perspective, Brian. My father was the Democratic precinct captain in our neighborhood. And so, and was very close to Phil Rock, who was the, Democratic, state Senate president. And you could be a completely solid, church-going, Altar Rosary Society Catholic person and still vote Democratic. You could still do that in good conscience. You simply can't do that today because they have gone so far afield.
Wait a second. Wait. I mean, Mike Madigan's pro-life.
Oh, yeah. And so,
right?
And so are the
Isn't he?
And so are the Kennedys. I don't know. No, I don't think, does he even make that claim? I don't believe that he does.
I don't know.
I mean, he's
he
certainly
did for
the
a long
product of
time.
one of our, he's a product of one of our schools. Look, Joe Biden, it talks about carrying his grandmother's rosary around with him. I mean, the level of hypocrisy, and, I don't know. I don't worry about them. They'll have to face the Lord someday and give an accounting for their actions, as we all will. But if I were them, I'd be a little more worried than I'd be about myself. So
yes,
just saying that, they have a lot to answer for, and the Lord's going to hold them accountable. So, you see how that works out for you on Judgment Day. But
the question is, can we hold them accountable in this temporal sense in any time in the near future? I mean, the Lord will do his business, but that doesn't mean we can't do some of our own accountability at the local level.
And that involves people becoming, more active and better educated. And certainly, I think the pro-life community, and Dan, you know this well, wild horses couldn't keep the average pro-lifer away from the polls. We vote. But, the sort of middle-of-the-road person, the more, the not-so-super-involved person, might let a thunderstorm or a snowstorm or whatever keep them away from the polls on a certain day. And, Cardinal George was very fond of saying, we get the politicians we deserve, right?
So how
going out to vote?
Yeah, so how important is it to do more than just vote when you're talking about some of the leading figures in advance of the sanctity of human life being under assault by Planned Parenthood, like Peter Breen, like
right.
Tom Morrison, this cycle?
Well, I do remember when Peter Roskam was in a very difficult race. I think it was against Tammy Duckworth. And I remember what Roskam and his wife and his kids and, his nieces and nephews and all the friends from their church that they attend, they pounded the pavement for him. I mean, they were going door to door. And I remember I ran into him at something, and he was saying he thinks he had shaken the hand of 75% of the people already who live in his district personally. And I do think personal motivation and personal investment are really critical. And I think that, that helps a lot when people are, making a decision about who to vote for. If they know who you are, they know your rep, they know that you're in the community and you're involved. But also, people kind of tend to follow, I guess, like sheep a little bit. If they see their neighbors have a sign out, if they see their neighbors are canvassing for a particular politician, I think that influences people. You have a better sense of this. You're far more involved in the political world than I am, but I know for myself as a voter, if I see someone I know and respect, and they're supporting a particular candidate, that will make me think more seriously about that candidate who I might not have considered.
She is Mary Fiorito. She's the Cardinal Francis George Fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center and a board member at Aid for Women, a Catholic life-affirming pregnancy center in Chicago. Mary, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It was good to be with you.